Hey guys, so today we've got my recap of my June 1 month 1 palette. So this is a series that I started last year, and basically what I do is I pick one palette from my collection to focus on throughout the month. I might set a goal to maybe hit pan on certain shades or just use each shade a certain number of times. And at the end of the month we come back and see how much progress I made, what my favorite and least favorite shades were. I show you all the looks that I created. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to see how far I can go with one palette and really get to know each palette in my collection. If you're new to my channel, I just want to give you a special welcome. Thank you so much for checking out my videos. My channel is really all about finding creative ways to use the products that I already have in my makeup collection. So if that sounds like fun to you, definitely make sure to subscribe to my channel because I upload at least 3 new videos every week. So let's go ahead and get into the recap of the palette now. So my June palette was the BH Cosmetics Summer in Tropez palette. This is the old packaging. I actually realized that they recently repackaged and renamed the shades, but I'm thinking it's the same formula. So you can still get this palette, it just won't look like this, which I think this is a cute design. I don't know why they changed it, but whatever. What I've decided for this series is I'm gonna do it like 1 month on, 1 month off. So in July, I won't have a 1 month 1 palette. I'll just let myself kind of use everything that I own and I won't be focusing on any certain palette. And then in August we'll come back with another 1 month 1 palette. So I think that way it'll keep me from getting too bored of the series because, you know, it is a lot of work making sure to like take pictures every single day of every look that I do. And it's a lot of focusing on one palette. Even though I do pull in certain palettes to pair with my 1 month 1 palette, I still find myself kind of feeling bad for the rest of my collection by the end of the month. So I think that'll be a good way to switch things up but keep the series going. So the rules this month were to try to use every shade in this palette at least 3 times. And my way of keeping things interesting and not neglecting the rest of my collection was that I would allow myself every other day to pair this palette with a different palette in my collection. So that means that every other day I was exclusively using this palette, and then the days in between I would try to pair it with something else. I didn't end up doing that quite as often as I thought I would. I was just having so much fun with this palette that I didn't really feel the need to pair it with other palettes too much. Another thing that I did at the beginning of the month was I picked out 3 kind of bonus shades from my singles collection, my magnetic singles, and it was these 3 singles from Clarity Cosmetics. It was so funny. A few of you guys pointed out in my intro video that this looks like a traffic light, and I didn't even realize that, but some of you were saying that it was driving you crazy because 2 of the shades were like flipped out of order. So I fixed it. Now we've got green, yellow, and red. Well, this is technically orange, but it looks red enough. So isn't that so funny? I hadn't thought of that, but that's a pretty cute idea for a little eyeshadow trio. So I basically just treated those singles and the BH palette as one palette to work from throughout the month. And every day that I was doing makeup to at least dip into 2 of the shades. So even when I was pairing it with a different palette, I would still at least use 2 of them. So in my intro, it's so funny, I accidentally hit pan on the shade Sand. As I was showing you the palette, I guess I accidentally like hit the shade with my fingernail or something, and so I had like the tiniest sliver of pan, but it seemed like I guess I was already really close to hitting pan anyway, so I probably would have hit pan on that shade this month even if that had not happened. But now, look at how much pan I have showing in that shade. That is so funny. So you can definitely tell that is one of my favorite shades in the palette. I mean, it's a very basic kind of just neutral shade, but it's an incredibly useful shade. I feel like it really anchors this palette. It gives me like a good transition color that pretty much goes with all of these shades. So I'm gonna go ahead and put now a picture on the screen of how many times I used each of the shades from the BH palette and my bonus shades. You'll see that my most used shade was actually, funnily enough, Marina, which is this sort of soft, shimmery pink color. And that shade I really used mostly as an inner corner highlight. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's my favorite shade in the palette, but it is definitely a very useful shade, and it is really pretty as an inner corner highlight or kind of as a lid shade. So that was my most used shade. I used that 15 times. And then my next most used shades were Sand, which is the shade that I have hit pan on, and Villa, which is this matte pink. And that definitely makes sense because I use both of those shades a lot as crease shades and transition shades and just to blend out other looks. So not at all surprising that those were my 3 most used shades. Those were the only shades that I used more than 10 times. And as far as my goal of using each shade 3 times, I did manage to meet that goal on every single shade. There were quite a few that I did only use 3 times, but I'm still very happy I managed to meet that goal because this palette has 16 shades in it, which is kind of a lot of shades, and then the 3 singles. So that adds up to 19 shades. So I feel like I did a really good job dipping into every shade. I thought there was maybe a chance I could hit pan on Villa, the pink, or maybe like Marina, but I didn't end up hitting pan on either one. Honestly, I'm surprised to have any pan in this palette right now because this is one of the newest palettes to my collection. I only just bought it in the spring of this year, so it's actually really surprising to me that I even have pan on sand. The mattes in here are quite soft and powdery, so it makes sense that, you know, it wouldn't be too difficult to hit pan on them. And I guess what I have realized is that the pans in here are pretty shallow, so if you are maybe trying to pan this palette or a similar palette from BH, this might be, you know, a pretty easy palette to hit pan on. And after using this palette every single day for a month, I can really say there is not a single dud shade in this palette, which is so impressive to me, especially given the price. I mean, I think this retails for about $17, but it often goes on sale for under $10. So, and I got it for, I think, like $8, which is such a steal. I mean, these really feel like high-end shadows to me, most of them. The only one that I think is a little bit, it's not bad quality at all, but it is just kind of sheer, is the shade Cabana here. It's this sort of deep, dusty purple. This one definitely goes on pretty sheer, which I actually like that. I'm not a big purple fan, so I prefer like kind of a dusty, soft purple anyway. That's what it looks like swatched. I mean, it definitely can be built up true to color, but if you just grab that on like a crease brush or something and dust it into your crease, it's going to be kind of a soft, dusty purple rather than like a really deep purple like it looks in the pan. That's the only shade that I would describe as sheer. All the other shades are like just very true to color, very pigmented. All of the mattes, even the bright, vibrant ones, are very easy to work with and easy to blend. They don't get patchy as I try to blend them out. Yeah, I'm just so impressed by this palette. So focusing on it for a month just kind of confirmed how I already felt about it, which is that it is an incredible quality palette. I hope they didn't change the formula when they repackaged it. I doubt they did. So I will go ahead and show you a comparison clip of what this looks like now versus what it looked like at the beginning of the month, so you can kind of see how much progress I did make. Of course, you'll be able to see lots of progress on sand. I went from just a tiny bit of pan to a huge amount of pan showing. And then there are dips in a lot of these shades now. Like you can definitely see Marina has a pretty big dip in it, Villa, Intoxicating. I do think like if I were to focus on this palette for one more month, I probably would hit pan on a few more shades. And then for my bonus shades, these I only used 3 times each, so you're not going to see like a ton of progress, but I do feel like these shades look a little bit more well-loved than they did before, because at the beginning of the month, they hardly had any use on them at all. So I loved having a few bonus singles added in for the month because normally I don't reach for my magnetic singles. I don't know why, I just don't, but this was a great way to actually get some use out of them. Definitely going to continue doing that each month. Every month I'll just kind of pick a few shades that I feel like coordinate well with the palette of the month. There were a few shades that I did struggle to meet the 3 use goal on because they're just colors that I don't wear often. You can probably guess what they are if you know me. These 3 shades down here, Nightlife, Jet Set, and Sizzle, those are some really bold shades. I'm not much of a purple person, I've mentioned a few times, so I had to kind of force myself to wear some purple looks this month. I ended up really liking the looks. I still just don't love that kind of bright like violet purple that much as a color. I think it looks really flattering on other people, but I'm not in love with that color just in and of itself. One of the very last looks of the month I did where I used all 3 of these shades because I still had only used them twice, and I'm so glad I pushed myself to use them a 3rd time because I ended up doing this really like warm, bold purple look, and you'll be so proud of me, I ended up pairing it with a bold purple lip as well. Normally when I do bold eye looks, I shy away from also doing a bold lip and I'll like tone it down with a nude, but no, this time I just went all out and wore that Wet n Wild Violet's Kiss lipstick that I struggle to wear, and that was such a fun look. I was very proud of myself for diving into those shades one last time. Also, I should have lumped this in with those 3 shades. Super Yacht was another one of those shades that I used for that last look. that is another one of the shades that I struggled with. It's a beautiful, beautiful color. Like, the quality is amazing. It's just that that's not a color I personally like wearing on my eyes very often, so that was kind of the lid shade of that look. And the only other shade that I would say I kind of struggled to actually use was the shade, oh, how do you pronounce that? Hang on a second. I've been saying it in my head, Pampelone, but I know that's so wrong.
Pampelone.
Pampelone. Was that good, French speakers? This bright kind of aqua blue color, I definitely struggled to use that one. There was one look I did that was kind of a halo eye using this shade kind of in the inner and outer corners and then coastline in the center. I did not like that look at all. I was filming that day and I ended up actually taking off that eyeshadow and redoing it and just doing like a winged liner with sizzle. But I think there's just something about this color that I don't find super flattering on myself, at least not like as an all-over lid shade. I think that's the kind of color I would stick to using maybe just as, you know, the technique I've been loving lately where I'm just wearing like a colorful winged liner and like no other eyeshadow. That I would do with that shade, or maybe just using it as like a pop of color as a lower liner with an otherwise neutral look. But all over the lid, it's a little much on me and like not in a good way. So that was one shade that I didn't love using. That was the only look I did this month that I ended up actually not liking and taking off. But those were the shades that I had the most trouble with, and then I already mentioned the shades I used the most, and pretty much every other shade I find very easy to incorporate into daily looks. I am the kind of person that I really like soft, muted color, and there is a lot of that in this palette. I love that you kind of get the option of soft, muted pastels, but also some really, really saturated, bold shades. So it kind of pushes me out of my comfort zone while still keeping me in my comfort zone with some of those neutral colors. So the next part of the video, I'm actually going to recreate my favorite look, and it's actually what I'm wearing on my eyes right now. I'm just going to do a quick little kind of talk through tutorial of how I did this look. After that, I will go ahead and show you all 25 of the looks that I created with this palette this month. And that'll just be kind of like a slideshow with music, and I'll have each shade labeled with what I used it for. So let's go ahead and get into my favorite look. It's what I've been wearing on my eyes throughout this whole video. This was one of the looks that I paired with another palette. I paired it with my e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette. I only used one shade from e.l.f. Earth and Ocean, which you'll see in a second. So I started out the look by just blending Villa, which is that matte light pink shade, into my crease. And then from there, I took Crepe, which is this sort of light mustardy yellow, onto the outer half of my lid. Then I took this matte, like pastel yellow called Intoxicating, and just packed that onto the inner half of my lid with just like a flat shader brush. And that is an example of a pastel that I think just works so well. Like, it actually shows up and it's pigmented despite being such a light pastel color. Then I just took kind of a combination of Crepe and Villa, the mustard and the pink on my lower lash line. Just add some kind of warm, soft definition to the lower lash line. Then the star of this look, I took the shade Hot Cheeto from my Clarity Single selection. And that I just used as a winged liner on my upper lash line. I just used an angled liner brush to apply that. And that shade is so pigmented that I was able to get a really, really rich, defined liner with that color without having to wet the brush or anything like that. And then finally, I grabbed the shade Sun Yourself from the e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette and used that to highlight my inner corner. And that's just like a really, really soft yellow shimmer. And then on the lips, I'm wearing the e.l.f. Seriously Satin Lipstick in the shade Persimmon. And this was definitely my favorite look because I feel like it was the most me. I've been really into like yellow and peach and orangey looks. I think it's just such a beautiful color combination for summer. And it's like kind of the muted color that I was talking about. I feel like it kind of looks like I use like watercolor on my eyes. So that was my favorite look of the month, but I enjoyed so many of these looks. So for this last part of the video, don't go anywhere because I'm going to show you all 25 of the looks that I created with this palette throughout the month. Some of them I used just the palette, some of them I used some of my bonus shades with the palette, and some of them I did pair other palettes from my collection with it. So let's go ahead and get into that now.